Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Abby Ball, Director of Marketing here at Marion Square, and with me today is co-founder and CEO Harvey Morrison and co-founder and CRO Greg Imahara. Just a quick overview of the agenda for today. We're going to explore what the SBIR Small Business Innovation Research Program is, or SBIR as you'll hear us reference this as today, and why this program could be potentially valuable to your organization. We'll also be sharing the SBIR program eligibility requirements, along with our experience-backed tips and best practices. And lastly, we'll share a few customer success stories and highlight some current SBIR solicitations that we're watching. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We will be recording the webinar today just so we can share later on. Everyone will be muted for the duration of the webinar, but we encourage you to submit any questions you may have through the Q&A window. We'll answer those questions as we go along as they're related to the topics Harvey and Greg are covering, and we'll also have a Q&A session at the end. And I'll also be sure to send out the slide deck we're using today, along with a few other materials following today's session. All right, Harvey, I'll hand it to you and let us get started today and share more about Marion Square.
Hey, thanks a lot, Abby, and thanks everybody for joining. As Abby said, I'm Harvey Morrison, the co-founder and CEO here at Marion Square. I thought I'd start by just giving you a quick background on the company, sort of who we are, what our experience has been in the space. Greg and I founded the company about 5 years ago, really with the sole mission of helping small, venture-backed, innovative technology companies navigate and win contracts in the government market. Greg and I both have extensive experience working with startups and venture-backed companies and have a real appreciation for what it takes for an organization to both launch as well as ramp as a company. We also understand the enormous opportunities working with the government can provide a small business, along with, as we like to say, a lot of the unique hurdles and issues that are associated with pursuing and winning government work. We've lived firsthand and understand the value of winning the right government contract and how that can set a company up for long-term success. We also have been on the side where you haven't done it right, you've pursued the wrong contract or spent time doing not the right go-to-market, and you end up wasting or draining a lot of company time and resources. So we come at this from a really unique perspective, and being able to help small companies is really why we started the business 5 years ago. Just a quick background on what we've been doing. Over the last 3 years or so, we've helped more than 30 companies successfully navigate and enter the federal market. And these companies range across several different verticals, everything from AI, cybersecurity, blockchain, AR, VR, logistics, and even various types of medical technologies and medical companies we've worked with, just to name a few. Over the last 2 years, we're going to be talking a lot about small business innovative research today. We've helped clients win over $5 million worth of those contracts. And again, we'll get into some more details of that as we go through the presentation. But in doing this SBIR work and having this focus as part of our business, we believe we've really developed an effective and efficient process for not only identifying relevant SBIR solicitations, but also writing and submitting winning proposals. And part of what we're going to talk about today are some of those tips and techniques that you can take and utilize as you look to pursue potentially some of this work. So what is the SBIR program? The government claims, this is from the government site, and we believe it, it's the largest source of early stage funding for startups and small businesses. And if you look at that, the numbers that they produce every year pretty much tends to back this statement up. Each year, up to 12 agencies participate in the SBIR program, and this program awards over $1.8 billion to over 5,000 companies every year that participate. So, bottom line, we feel like as Marion Square and we advise our clients, you should at least look at this program and make it a part of your overall go-to-market strategy, because the program is really designed to connect innovative technology companies with the US federal government. So you're not going into this program competing with the Lockheed Martins and the Booz Allens and the Raytheons and the big systems integrators for work. You have to be a small business to participate in this program. And it's a very low risk, low cost way to start to pursue and connect with the government, because to win a phase one, as you'll see, doesn't require you to have a government salesperson and a technical resource that run around the Beltway making lots of calls and doing lots of meetings. It really requires you to do the research and generate a quality proposal to win a phase one to get you connected into the government space. So that's why we really recommend that our clients look at this, and why we've built the whole practice around the SBIR program initially here. So a little more detail about it. The SBIR is broken out at a high level into 3 phases. Phase 1 is really your concept development phase. This phase is really where the government funds you to go out and meet with clients and actually show them your product, talk about your product, and try to identify ways that you can work with these various program agencies. The whole goal of the phase 1 is to fund you to find an organization that says, we like this product, we want to work with this company, and we've identified areas where we'd like for them to add features and functionality or certifications so we can then deploy this product in a production environment. What you're supposed to do by the end of this phase 1 is to have identified a group to work with. They've helped you develop a statement of work, and they're willing to sponsor you to move forward to a phase 2. Now, if you can't find those at the end of the phase 1, there's no penalty. You just won't be able to move forward and hopefully get a phase 2. But if you can identify that agency, have them work with you to develop the statement of work, and have them say, hey, we'll be a sponsor, then you have the ability to submit that and actually go for a phase 2 where the government will actually pay you to do that work. Now, the nice thing about this work is, and we'll talk about it in the next slide, is the government doesn't take ownership of that intellectual property that they're paying you to do. They actually want you to make it part of your overall product and then go offer it to other government agencies as well as commercial clients. So it's a really nice way, if you can tie the government's requirements to your overall roadmap, to get funding to go ahead and do future development for your product. And in the last phase, the phase 3, sorry, Abby, if you go back. The last phase, the phase 3, is where then the government would say, hey, we like the work that you've done, the product meets our requirements, now we want to buy licenses. So again, they're not saying we paid you to develop this, you owe us those licenses. They'll pay you to develop it, and then they'll pay to buy the licenses as part of a phase 3. So it's really a low risk, nice way to get funding to get your product finalized or developed, and then still be able to sell licenses on the back end through those 3 phases. Okay, Abby, if you go to the next slide, please. So why do we like these? Sort of what's the real value here? Again, one, you go back to if you win a phase 1, the government's going to fund you to actually go talk to agencies and find organizations that need your product. So you're not bearing all that cost and risk on your back. The second one is, if you win the phase 1 and you're lucky enough then to go and get a phase 2, the funding that the government provides you to do this work is non-dilutive. They're not asking for shares of stock. They're not asking to own the intellectual property. They just want you to finish the development to meet some of their functional requirements. And they're actually hoping you're going to take this and sell it to other government agencies and commercial clients. The other thing we like about it is, if you win a phase 2, you get a sole source contract with the government. You can take that not only to the group you're currently working with, but also go to other governmental agencies and leverage that sole source. So you won't have to compete to sell your product against other clients when you have a sole source contract. So winning that phase 2 is critical. Again, the government's going to fund you to develop these capabilities to better meet their needs, but they also will allow you to keep that IP and sell it to both commercial and government clients. And we've also worked, the last topic here, which I think is critical, we've worked with a lot of different companies that have won a phase 1 and have on the back of that phase one gone out to vendors or VCs and said, hey, we know there is a need for our product in the government. We know there's a product market fit. We've actually entered into a joint development program with the government. And on the back of that, they've been able to raise their valuation and actually raise additional capital on the back of those SBIRs. So that's another great way to think about how you can leverage an SBIR to help your organization. So the eligibility requirements, these are critical in order for you to compete. So I want to make sure we go through each one of these and you know. So Abby, go ahead and hit the first one, please. You have to be a US based company. 51% of your ownership has to be US citizens. You have to be a for-profit company, so you can't be a non-for-profit or a university to go after these. And you have to have less than 500 employees. And that's it. So that's the nice thing about this program is it's not overly onerous on all the different requirements that help you qualify. If you're US based, 51% of your company is owned by US citizens, you're a for-profit entity and have less than 500 employees, you're eligible to compete for these small business innovative research programs. So lastly, just some tips that we've got on submitting and winning them. You got to go through and get a cage code, and you've got to get registered in a government system called SAMS. A lot of folks wait till the very end to do that, and they end up not getting it done in time. So we always say, if you decide, hey, this is something we want to do, immediately go out and get that taken care of first and foremost. The next thing is the government will give you up to a certain time, like a noon on a Thursday, to submit the proposal. Plan to submit your proposal 3 days earlier because the system gets overwhelmed at the last minute. And if you can't get your proposal submitted on time, they won't wait. So plan to get it done early, plan to submit it at least a few days before. This next two really kind of go together, and they're really key, is research your proposal, tie it to government issues, and make sure you quote that in the topic or the proposal that you're writing. Greg's going to give you an example here in a little bit of how we've worked with a client in the past who didn't win. They submitted SBIR after SBIR and they didn't win. And we got in and started looking at it, and all they were doing was attaching marketing material and trying to submit that as a proposal. Hey, our technology is great, buy it. You really have to go in and research how the government can use your technology and highlight that in that proposal. That's the key piece we feel to winning, or one of the key pieces we feel to winning these things, is tying it to a government problem and being able to document that. The other key piece of it is the government is focusing on dual use technologies. So really work on your commercialization plan, which will be part of this SBIR submission, to show not only, hey, we can go out and win commercial customers with this technology, but when you fund us to add on features and functionality, we have clients, or we know where we're going to go to sell this in the commercial space. The government is tired of funding technologies that are only built for them, because they feel like, one, over the long haul, it's going to cost them way more to keep that product up to date. And if commercial clients aren't using the technology, they're not going to get the benefit of additional features and functionality being built into it. So really focus on that commercialization strategy that the government's asking about, and show how you're going to leverage the product and the work you do to generate business in the commercial space.
Hey, so
with that, I'll turn it over to Greg. Greg's got a couple of examples of where we've worked with customers in the past, so you have a real good sense of the capabilities and what are some of the requirements there.
Cool, thanks, Harvey. So SAFER is an advanced facial recognition and computer vision platform, and we actually began this engagement by helping them identify 2 direct to phase 2 SBIRs worth $1 million each. So we brought in our SBIR team, we conducted the research, we built the narrative, we really zeroed in on the government problem for the SBIRs, who this affected and why, and then we developed the proposal, positioned the solution to meet the defined requirements, and ultimately won both SBIRs for $2 million. Wabi is a DevSecOps orchestration platform, and as Harvey alluded to or talked to, right, when we first met them, they submitted a phase 1 SBIR as an example, but was not selected. So they really needed our help, and it was really about getting non-dilutive funding to drive the development of the software. So, as Harvey mentioned, we reviewed the original phase 1 submission, and it's a common issue, right? It's a marketing brochure when it needs to be about the customer and demonstrating you understand the problem, researching, tying the narrative back to this, right? So after our team came in, we did the research, developed a proposal, we worked on the pricing, we submitted. Within 3 months of the rejected original non-selected SBIR, we won there. So 2 good examples of customer success there. Abby, you want to go to the next slide? So what's out there today? So for the 12 participating federal agencies, they typically release their SBIR solicitations 2 or 3 times a year, just depending on the department or the agency. Currently, right now, the Department of Defense has their pre-release. Later this month, they're going to have the official release, and 30 days later, the submissions are due. There are 169 specific topics. They range from various things, well-defined topics and requirements. But what's interesting is the Air Force, via AFWorks, which is their innovation hub, has a phase 1 open topic, and they have a direct to phase 2 open topic. Open topics are literally open topic. They're blue skies. And we always recommend pursuing these for it. On the phase 1 open topic, think of it as the Air Force is placing a lot of smaller bets that are out there. So it's a larger pool of money that are out there. We have the National Science Foundation, in particular the National Seed Fund, and this is actually a year-round program. It's a SBIR program behind the scenes. We're very familiar with this. They pretty much fund every type of technology category that are out there. So some examples of advanced analytics, AI, there's biomedical, bioengineering, cloud computing, environmental technologies, and numerous other ones that's there. And so there's definitely a certain process to there. Also to note, currently the Health and Human Services has their solicitations right now. So there's hundreds of healthcare related, technology related solicitation topics there for that. So Abby, you want to go to the next slide? So Marion Square in services, right? So we have a number of services that are out there. We have a market assessment that provides market research and critical insight. What's the total addressable market for your company and your solution? What system integrators own awards for the contracts that you need to be part of? What the competitive landscape, the target agencies, who are the actual agency contacts. We then develop a pretty detailed go-to-market strategy and sales plan that focuses on the specific opportunities that are identified in the market assessment that's there. And so our resources will then execute on the sales plan, building pipeline, and helping with contracts. One of those activities is working on SBIRs, and that's the whole goal of today, right? We help companies identify the funded opportunities that are out there, the SBIR opportunities. Once identified, we put together the proposal strategy, we do the research, we deeply understand the issue of the problem, we equally understand the customer's technology and use cases, and then we do the positioning, create the content, consult on pricing, and help you submit. That's there. And as Harvey mentioned, we feel our experience, our process, and our methodologies gives our clients a major advantage in taking advantage of winning these funding that's out there. So, Abby?
Great. So quick Q&A session. Greg, we had a couple questions come through. First one being, what is an MOU signer and when would you typically need an MOU signer?
Great question. So in order, as Harvey was mentioning earlier, in order to do an SBIR phase 2, think of it as doing development work on your software or product for a particular client like the Air Force, just as an example. It's configuring and developing your product to meet functional requirements. The importance and the need for the MOU signer is to help build the statement of work, help build the adaptations to the product, right? To be able to meet the requirements for, again, as an example, the Air Force. So, I'm an MOU sponsor. This is my organization. We need these functionalities. And then by them signing the MOU, the sponsor is willing to work with you, the company, as you go through the development, right? And so that's kind of the importance, the need of MOU sponsor. That was a great question.
Well, one of the things, let me just add in there, the value of this is you can now go to an agency and say, hey, if you like my product, but you want these things taken care of, we can bring the funding with you. We just need you to be the MOU signer. So this is a real benefit to the agencies, and it's a great selling tactic for a company to be able to say, hey, I know your limitation in buying my product is we don't have a FedRAMP certification, or we don't have these 5 features. What if I could bring the money and get that done. Would that interest you? And that's a great way to start the relationship with the MOU signer and get your product into that organization.
Great point. Yep.
Another question that came through here is, what can SBIR funds be used for?
Another good question. Generally, SBIR funds can be used for salary and wages for company employees, associated fringe benefits, material supplies for sure, and there's a number of other direct costs needed to carry out the proposed R&D for it. So,
cool, awesome, and looks like
just,
the last
just to add one little bit there. Just think of it as in a phase 1, the funding can be used to allow you to travel, to meet with the governmental agencies, to build a custom demo, everything you would need to interest that agency to build an MOU to try to get to a phase 2. A phase 2, the funding, think about it as everything associated with running the project and doing the development work to make your product ready for them to deploy. And then the phase 3, think about it as they're buying straight up licenses to deploy your product. So that's another way to think about in the big buckets of the different phases.
Awesome, thank you, Harvey. Looks like the one last question we've had come through here is, what are the federal agencies that are participating in this SBIR program?
So the SBIR program is a congressionally mandated program, and it requires federal agencies that have external budget research budgets over a certain amount to earmark 1.5–3%. And so for small businesses, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense for sure, Department of Commerce, Education, Energy, Transportation, Health and Human Services, NASA is in there, USDA, the EPA, the Small Business Association. I think that's all 12, right? So you have a pretty good collection of pretty much.
Well, also keep in mind, Greg, you mentioned the high-level agencies, so like DoD, but underneath DoD, there's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, right? Underneath, you know, DHS, you've got TSA, you've got, you know, US Coast Guard, you've got all those things. Under, you know, DOJ, you've got, so there's a lot of agencies that are under the umbrella of those 12 overall organizations that participate.
You're exactly right. So, for example, Health and Human Services, right, has National Institute of Health, CDC, and a number of these. Those are all included into the SBIR topics and categories. So, great questions.
Awesome. It looks like we actually have one more question come through there, Greg. This question is, what if I already have 2 products that are ready to sell? What would be my next step in relation to the SBIR program?
First is understanding and identifying, right, what SBIR program topics that are out there, right, depending what the product is, right? And so identification is going to be the key one. Once you identify that and understand the requirements that are set forth in that SBIR solicitation, it's about then they'll do the research. And as Harvey mentioned, the research really is to deeply understand the problem, but tying it back to an end user within that organization. So if it's in the Air Force or if it's in the HHS in that world, begin crafting those requirements, right, and content in there, and avoid being in a marketing brochure, showing up and throwing up in the terms of marketing, right? There, Harvey, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I would agree wholeheartedly with you. I think the research is key because I think in some instances, you know, if you have a product that's much further along developed, you may want to consider going straight to a phase 2 versus trying to do a phase 1. And it's all about then identifying that MOU signer and getting them to work with you, right? So, hey, I've got a product that's pretty much fully developed. What I really need is it's a cloud-based product and I need a FedRAMP certification. So let's go find an MOU signer, get you the money that you need to get the FedRAMP certification, and then be able to sell them licenses from there. So it would really depend on the product. But Greg's point, it all starts with the research to really kind of identify and put a plan together that says, do I go after a phase 1? And if I do, who am I targeting? Or do I go directly to a phase 2 because I know, and then who are we targeting there as well? So that first key step is the research to get things off the ground and going.
Awesome. Thank you for that. It